Morning, people. That was a bit of a shaky start. Yeah, not sure how many people's out there to tune in. Horrible, snowy day. There might be a few more at home than I thought, but primarily just wanted to do this one as a bit of a catch-up session on some of the older questions like I did previously. And yeah, if anyone's there to join in along for the ride, then happy days. Yeah. The weather, obviously, we never like to see snow this time of year, do we? As koi keepers, it's you're just on that exciting sort of turn into spring when you think it's going to be time to get them covers off and finally start enjoying your pond properly again. And then bang, we get it with a snowstorm. But there we go, the great British weather. So yeah, yesterday, if you've not seen it already on the Koi Wholesale Facebook page, have a look. Did a couple of live videos of the NND shipment arriving. That included all the mud pond event fish, and yeah, quite a lot of my sort of collection that's been growing on out there as well. So it was a pretty awesome shipment, and we managed to film the unpacking of all the really special pieces coming out of the bags. So yeah, happy days. And yeah, morning to those of you tuning in. We'll warn you as well, I've not got Steve hiding there in the background, so if we have a few issues, then or I sort of go quiet for a minute, because I'm concentrating on what's going on the screen as well, and I have a major inability to do more than one thing at once. So yes, there we have it. But yeah, check out those videos, like I say, if you've not seen them already, because they're pretty spectacular. And yeah, also I've seen, say I've got my copy now. I managed to collar one out of the office. Issue 21 dropping. I can't believe we're coming up to our second anniversary of the magazine as well. So yeah, just sort of signed off issue 22 the other day. Obviously have to work quite a bit in advance, and yeah, heading towards that sort of landmark edition, which is pretty exciting, and obviously grateful for everyone's support who it's all right as having these ideas, but if they can't get the support for them, then inevitably we can't carry on. So yeah, that's that one. So feel free, if you have got any questions, pop them in. I'll do my best to sort of rally it in between. And yeah, we'll go from there. I've just seen one actually that come in that's quite interesting and quite relevant. Morning, I watch videos and people keep their ponds at 14 degrees. I thought this was the worst temperature to keep koi at. Am I not understanding something, please? Yeah, so I mean, this is a whole lot of one of these just topics that's full of its opinion, obviously, once again, really, on what's right and what's wrong. My opinion is it's a bit of a waste. I sort of say, you know, if you are heating but only wanting just to keep the nip off, 12 degrees I see as being the absolute maximum that you need to be keeping them at. And the reason I say that is because you need things to go slightly dormant. If we look at spring, and this is how I've always analysed it, the sort of temperature band of spring that ponds get stuck in is that kind of anywhere between sort of 12 and 18. We're in a spot where the immune system of the fish is sort of there. If you're keeping above 12, there but not quite there. So they're really not performing in that respect. And then it's also, you know, an ideal temperature range where parasites can still be quite prevalent and quite active. And I just don't like. I've seen ponds kept in that temperature band. I've come out of spring, especially when you're covered over as well. So obviously it's a lot of a steamier environment under there, which I don't like. You know, the warmer you get covered over, the better gas exchange you need to be getting, I believe, to keep the pond right. And yeah, I've just seen fish come out of that environment not looking very good. I've seen it be the catalyst for bacterial problems over the years. And that's where all this comes from. Like I say, it is opinion. This opinion of mine is formed from 20 odd years of experience and seeing what I've seen at that temperature range. So it's still not a sort of range where you're going to be chucking too much food at them. So I don't see the point when you're paying to pay to heat that excessively. Like I say, if you're going to heat them up, you want to be 18 plus, which is a better temperature where you can do more with them. And just keeping them in that in-between zone, I think it's just an absolute waste and a potential hazard as well. So yeah, for me, optimal, you know, anywhere sort of between 7 and 12 if you're doing it. And obviously it's all done with budget in mind, because heating water at the moment, depending on how you're doing it, is very expensive. It's never a cheap process, but it's just getting all the more crazier. So that's my thoughts on heating. Like I say, to answer your question, if you keep it at 14, it's not too bad, don't get me wrong. But for me, I just don't see the point. You can notch it down another couple, or it'll go even further than that. The fish behavior will still be the same. You still won't be feeding a lot. So there's not really many differences, and you just take all that strain away from the heating and the costs as well. So hope that helps you out, Amanda. And I get it, there's so much conflicting advice and stuff out there. I think that's why it's important, to trust a voice, that you find useful and kind of stick with it. So yes, right. Just give me a moment. I'm going to delve into the older question files and see what we've got sat there. Oh, there we go. You see, I'm always you get drawn in by the new ones cropping up. Ricky, I see so many koi keepers use so many different foods. In your experience, what food would you use to grow koi? If so, does the age of the koi play a big part starting early? Yeah, I'm surprised, Dean. I don't know if you've been following the content for long, but obviously there's only ever one answer with me with this: sake akari. Obviously, food is budget dependent. I absolutely get that, and sake is not the cheapest. Although, if you do look at one of the videos I did on my channel about food, and you actually start looking at it price per kilo, it's not all that wild in comparison, and it all depends on the sort of size bags and things that you buy. But it's better if you start at the top. Sake is the one. It's phenomenal. I keep saying it. I believe it's one of the best koi products actually ever created, and what it can do, it's so far above and beyond everything else out there. It's crazy, and it's actually backed by a patented the Akari germ, which is a patented probiotic process in the food as well, which I believe is a mass part of the digestive efficiency of it. So yeah, that would be the one. Let's say there's others out there, but I'm not going to go backing them and sort of doing all that stuff, because it's not something I believe in. You'll only ever hear me backing products that I use and pay out my own money on. So yeah, say other choices. If you're looking for something else, if that doesn't quite fit, you'd be worth speaking to your local dealers or something like that. See what it is they're recommending. But I always tend to have a look, and you want some consistency from your dealer on this, because there are some that just tend to go with whatever's making the best margin at any given point, which is obviously frustrating. We want to see that they've got some kind of commitment to the product, even using it themselves, to be honest. So yeah, good question. Love them food ones. Right. Anyway, I am going to get back into these old bits. Just bear with me, folks. There we go. Can you tell me more about Ayawakaba? There's not a lot on the internet about them. Yeah, correct. So it's a variety. I think a lot of people, we still, they could be called quiche sui. One producer of them has started kind of going down that route now. And ultimately, it kind of depends on the pattern layout, because Ayawakaba, as I see them, tend to have more of a sort of Komonryu, informal, quirky layout to the pattern. Whereas a quiche sui obviously needs that structured kind of shisui pattern, but ultimately the color of the two is going to be exactly the same. Ayawakaba was produced originally by Yamanaka Oya. And yeah, I mean, interestingly, one time I actually said to him, are these quiche sui? And my God, he got angry. It's absolutely not, the Ayawakaba. It's something he created. And yeah, I mean, other than that, to be honest with you, there's not too much more I can tell you. Like I say, I do think there's a distinct difference between Ayawakaba and a quiche sui, although the coloration is the same. Marasaka has become a really prominent producer of them, although he gets both, because we do get some that are blatantly of shisui pattern, and shisui is a part of the makeup of them. So you can see where there's the sort of misinterpretation. And again, the breeders all say different on this one, but the guy who created the Yamanaka Oya is the guy who, if you call him a Kishisui in his presence, be prepared to run. So, but yeah, good question. They're a very interesting variety, really grow well as well, particularly the Marasaka ones, which I tend to have. My God, they grow like crazy. And I find them really, really interesting, although they're not the easiest to keep at times like Shisui, but they're worth the challenge and the risk. Right. Ricky, I have a 3-bay filter filled with Japanese matting. Would I have better filtration if I converted it to a fluid bed? In my opinion, yes, you would. I'm a big advocate of fluid beds. It's the primary filtration I run on all of my raising ponds. Ever since it was introduced by Evolution Aqua in the Nexus filter, for me, I just got the concept straight away. I mean, what we've got there is a filtration where you've got obviously, a lot of people with matting use aeration in the chamber as well. You absolutely should be doing that. But from the aeration, we've got the protected surface area, which is really, really important, because I think if you've got Japanese matting in a 3-bay filter such as this, you're likely going to have a buildup of mechanical debris in there from time to time. So it's absolutely the case that you're going to have to disrupt that filter with some kind of cleaning, albeit really with pond water, so you don't damage it with all the chlorine and whatnot in the hose pipe. But yeah, fluid beds for me, you've got this protected surface area on the internal bit of the media. Then the very motion where it's bubbling around and gently contacting with each other, allowing for dead bacteria to be knocked off back into the water body and then new to grow. I believe that concept is absolutely superb. Obviously, they are well aerated. And then the very motion, I mean, if we look at a Nexus, the two that I've got running up at Koi Wholesale have never, ever had to have any servicing done to the outer part. I can clear that at any point and there's never a skerrick of waste in there, which is what you absolutely want in a biological filter. You do not want organic waste sat on top of any biological surface area, because the anaerobic effect of that waste is going to choke the aerobic effect of the biological filter media. Not only that, obviously it poses a risk. And like I say, what you don't want to be doing is, it's quite a fragile environment that builds up. Or the biofilm itself is quite indestructible when it's there. But what you have got to be careful of is damaging it, because certainly like the nitrifying bacteria converting your nitrite to nitrate is always quite fragile. So, you know, if you're cleaning it and all of a sudden you've got a good blast with a hose pipe, you're going to do so much damage. I used to see that all the time in the shop with newcomers to the hobby who would, you know, typical like box filters, pressure filters, things like that, taking them out, giving it all a good hosing down. Next thing they're in with problems, fish problems, which are water quality problems, and that would be the root cause of it. So I think it's hard that with Japanese matting, the way the breeders do it in Japan is those filters are generally fed by a mid-water feed, which takes slightly cleaner water through, and then there's huge settlement before it reaches the matting chamber. So there is a lot less settlement, but the size of these filters is huge compared to like a 3-bay filter there we're talking about, where mechanical debris will pass through. So yeah, I'd be more of a, let's say, a mass advocate of the fluid bed rather than just the typical matting. So hope that's useful, and I do think you'd see a massive improvement on that. Obviously, if you're going to change it, however, the advice would be that you obviously don't do it all at once. Say there's 2 chambers, for example, you would want to, you know, do them one at a time and let the new filter establish itself, rather than just throw it all away, which is ultimately throwing the heartbeat of your pond away at the minute. So yeah, good question though. Right, I'm going to jump one more out of this list, and then I'm going to come to some of the live questions. I think this is possibly one people know the answer to by now if you've been listening to a while. What are the key traits you look for in koi, and in what order of importance? Yeah, I think this is always, because we do talk about it a lot, and you've heard me ramble on about body for absolutely ages now. But I think the important part here is not misunderstanding this list, because I mean, body is absolute king. In Japan, no fish is really considered high quality without having the body to suit. So that's sort of like a given. Skin quality, they say, comes next, and then pattern. But this really depends on the importance of all three. Really, ultimately comes down to what budget you are working with, and this is something I've tried to stress a few times, because all three are very important if you're looking to compete at a show. The thing that makes typically a fish a prize winner a lot of the time does end up becoming the pattern. So in some instances, it's often the most important thing, but the other qualities have got to be there, because, you know, at the Old Japan, for example, you've got so many fish that have got size, got phenomenal bodies, and got phenomenal skin quality. So what's the differentiating factor that makes one a winner and one not? It's the pattern. It becomes really important. And having a pattern to suit the sort of taste of the individual marketplace that it's in. In Japan, the tastes are different to what they are in Europe. So yeah, it's hard to sort of make that list. If depending on the budget you're buying at, there's always going to be a compromise. This is something I've always been keen to stress. Even at the highest end budgets, you know, a lot of the time there's compromises, unless you're probably in the minute 1% that can buy those almost perfect koi, because no koi is ever perfect, in my opinion. But yeah, I can't, as much as, like I say, body's huge, you have to understand this. And this is why you sort of get nailed in, because I think subconsciously we're all naturally drawn to pattern. It's completely normal. It's the first thing that most eyes see. And then you kind of have to dissect it from there on in. I'm lucky over the years I've been able to manage to train my eye, where a lot of the times I miss some small pattern elements. I'm not going to lie, because I'm that tuned in to the other stuff. I'll often have people come and look at fish and go, oh, can you see that number in that pattern, for example, or this and that? And I'm completely oblivious to it, because, like I say, I've sort of really, really worked hard at that over the years. But obviously, you've got to also like what you're looking at. That's a really, really important point. So, yeah, body shape, body, skin quality, pattern. But, you know, there comes a point where it's all important at certain levels. I think the interesting thing is it's knowing that on a lower budget for koi, you're more than likely, if you find a pattern, you'll be compromising on one of the other elements, at least. So again, depending on where you're at, it might be that you find a fish that's got that dream pattern for you, but there's a compromise on skin quality. But I think the big thing here is, what compromise is it on skin? Is it to the point where it might not quite have the ultimate luster or super refined kiwa? Because if it's got colour stability and we're not worried about it losing its colour, for you, that might be perfectly all right. And that's what's important to bear in mind. There's only certain elements where you need to be ticking all these boxes, and it's mainly if you're competing, because ultimately it's a fish you've got to have in your pond. I think it's good to be aware of this stuff, but there is no perfect fish that you're going to pick up for £300 or £400. And this is why I often talk about it with breeders as well, because that's an area sometimes where you can compromise when you have to. Because I always use Kohaku, because it's a really, really easy example. We take Dainichi and Hoshikin, two breeders literally a stone's throw from each other. At Dainichi, your money goes absolutely nowhere. So you will, you know, if you've got a lowish budget and you're trying to buy Dainichi, it'll be full of compromises. You'll probably get one of three in that instance, or 1.5 at the most. Whereas then if we go down and you take that same budget to Hoshikin, all of a sudden, I mean, because breeding, I mean, skin quality and shape, to be honest, with these two is so inherent. But what you'll get at Hoshikin, mainly compared to Dainichi on a lower budget, is a better pattern. So Hoshikin produces great patterns anyway. It seems to be a part of his lineage, whereas Dainichi produces more bolder, stronger patterns. And yeah, because he's just not quite the same brand, he produces a lot of them, and it's so you get the patterns. So that's where you can sort of tip that budget at times and get more bang for your buck, basically. It's why it's important to consider it all. So I know I've gone off topic a bit there, but I just don't like to throw things out there without some level of understanding behind it all. You just to say body, skin, pattern. It's sort of like that, but it's such a thing just to say neglect pattern, because it is a huge part of the hobby. When buying a new fish, owning a fish, whatever it is. So it's important to understand the sort of context around it, and I hope I've done that without waffling too much. So right, I'm going to dive into the live feed a minute, if you just bear with me. Simon's Goipon, morning. Right, just let me just catch up on the feed. Thank you to everyone tuning in. Always surprises me how many people are sat there listening to have a rumble on about us. When will the N&D Mud Pond Koi be ready? If they only come yesterday, be about a month's time. They'll have cleared and done quarantine. So we are in touch with the dealers, and they can keep you informed on where we're at with everything there. But hey, hi Ricky, what's your experience and feedback in growing Deutz Koi? I usually have some issue growing them big, to be honest with you. Yeah, you will do, because they're just not naturally big growing. It depends, obviously, which Deutz we're talking about, because we've got the likes of Deutz Karashigoi, which buck the trend. But if we move into the realms of Deutz Go Sankey and quirky varieties like that already, I mean, what sort of happened with Deutz is they're so far removed. There's been so much work to take an original Deutz fish, which is big scaled. So the big scales along the lateral line, dorsal line, and sometimes other area of the bodies, to get them in the Japanese vision where there is only scales on the dorsal line. That's been what they've done. And obviously to do that has been a lot of in the breeding process, which has led to then creating that and creating the quality, but then struggling to get the big growth and jumbo sort of growth that we're talking about. Karashigoi are a bit different to that, because it's completely different breeding, and we've not tried to strip all that stuff away from them. So there's still big genetics in there. And yeah, I mean, size wise, we can still, don't get me wrong, you can still achieve your sort of 70s, 75s with a lot of Deutz fish out there, and some are getting better. But what it takes, it's going to take a big change in breeding approach to do things differently here. I've actually seen this, and it's a young line. Miyatora is producing Deutz Show and has been doing for a long time now, but not as long a time as Shinoda and Hiroi, for example. Now, what I tend to see with Miyatora Deutz Show a lot still is they do tend to look like they've got stronger bodies and a bit more growth potential. But what you also get is a lot more random Deutz scale, like the scale lines or random Deutz scales throughout the body on the fish in general. So, yeah, they're a challenge, and there are people trying to crack it, and that's what it'll take. One of the last times last conversation I had with Marihiro before COVID was he had a vision. He wanted to produce big Deutz Shower, and he already had the parent fish swimming around for it. So, yeah, it's something they're obviously always working on, but it's already so difficult. I mean, a lot of these stable Deutz Go Sankey lines, for instance, are such a challenge, and the deformity rates in these new spawnings are just crazy. They are a real challenge, and that's why you don't see everybody producing them. There's just a few real specialists in Japan doing it. So, yeah, good question there. And you can't beat a good Deutz fish, but they are a tricky beast. Right, let's get that one off. Another food question from Graham. Going to use sake colour in the summer, can you explain the difference between sake pure white and colour? Yeah, I mean, sake pure white, and this is actually, I'm not going to go too much into, just written a full piece on this for coming up in issue 22, because obviously I've spoken so much about sake Akari, still get a lot of questions about all the different foods and mixes and things like that. So I've written a buyer's guide feature on it to help everybody out. But yeah, the difference, just very like, colour is a normal diet that you can use. Pure white and deep red are conditioning foods, primarily for show purposes. And you can use them in a structured program to help get your koi to an absolute peak condition before a show. Sake colour, as I use it, is used as a general diet throughout the season to enhance the colour in whatever level of aggression you want to, really. Whether that be you need it aggressively, use it 100%. You can feed it a bit more long term. or mixing it sort of 50-50, because depending on what you want to do, or even 75-25, there's all different mixes. But obviously pure white and deep red are super expensive. They're only available in 5 kilo bags over here, which doesn't help. But yeah, I wouldn't, it's not a food I'd be saying you need to go out and rush to buy and use, because I don't see the purpose or where it fits in for most people. So yeah, good one. But like I say, if you want to get into the real depths of it all, if you're a Koi Talk subscriber, that will be coming in issue 22. If not, you'll be able to buy the back issue. And yeah, on that, there's actually a question we had. I just want to mention now, sort of how it works with the mag. If you're not a subscriber yet and you want to get involved in issue 21, what you can do is, if you subscribe today, you'll receive a copy of the latest issue, being 21, and then be in the subscription pile moving forwards. But yeah, with some of the new content and features and bits and bobs, I think it's well worth getting in. I've just got it here in front of me, and you'll see the feature we did there. Look, preparing your pond for spring, that I've been on about. Really long piece, really in depth about, you know, common problems that I think a lot of people face. And we've got the first buyer's guide in there about automatic feeders in issue 21 as well, which is a great one. So, and I've just seen Joe's watching. Morning, Joe. I'll tell you what you should do, if I can manage to do this. Yeah, get yourself, if you still got one of the old links, Joe, get yourself logged in, mate, and come and tell everybody what you thought to your experience of the NND shipment yesterday, buddy. So we'll see if we can manage to get Joe on for 10 minutes. Right. Terry O'Connell. Are Mizuogan and Key Mitsuba related? As other than colour, they are very alike. The key could be called Key Mizuogan. Let me know your thoughts. No, they're not. I suppose the Mizuogan, if you were to break it down, would be along the lines of like a metallic version of a Key Mitsuba, but they're just referred to as Mizuogan. That's what's the breeding line. There's actually only Hirasawa who produces those fish. It's remarkable he's ever done it. So we do see other variations of them. I had an amazing yellow example, the Deutsch Key Mitsuba, actually, that went to Sunnybank Koi. That was absolutely epic from Aoki. And we do also sort of have Deutsch Gin Mitsubas at times. So I see your line of thinking there, Terry. And to be honest, I've never actually asked him what is used as a pairing to produce that variety. So when I'm next there, it's just something I'll sure to dig into, because if you've not seen Mizuogan already, they are a really impressive variety, one that would grace any pond, to be honest with you, certainly when they get some size on. And the luminosity of the colour is just absolutely insane. Martin, if we take Issa, for example, is there a big difference in bloodlines? Aren't they all high quality? Best regards from Denmark. Yeah. Hi, Martin. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, there is a big difference in bloodlines. Aren't they all high quality? Yes. I mean, in Japan, typically I would say the majority are high quality for sure. But there's variances of qualities. That is the case. You know, new bloodlines aren't necessarily all high quality. You know, there can be some real shockers in there for a little while. But there is very different traits. That's what it's important to remember. And it really does make an impact. You know, growth is a very big one with parent fish and bloodlines. And it's consistent traits. You know, this is what makes one bloodline better than the other, when they can build some stability. And just bear with me, fam. I'm just going to send Joe the link. If you just give me 1 second. So yeah, bloodlines, like I say, consistency is really the big sort of key to it. So what you get, this is why a Dainichi commands the price that they do sort of in the end, because they consistently produce the best fish every year with the similar characteristics There we go. We should have him in a minute. Similar traits. You're getting that body from Dainichi, regardless of the parent set. It's such an inherent trait. You're getting exceptional Benny quality. With Showa, you're getting the absolute best Sumi quality as well. That is what you're paying for. That when you buy those Tosai, they can deliver X, Y, and Z. That's the big difference there. We also know that lineage has the capability to produce grand champions because they've done it repeatedly. Same with Sakai. And then you obviously get into the other ones where, you've got different Sankey bloodlines that are high quality. Marido, Sakai, very high quality, but then we get different body traits, different Sumi traits. So it's not necessarily about quality with bloodlines. It's about knowing the characteristics because they can help you understand the roadmap of the fish moving forwards in the future. So, it's a really, really important one. And, very, very good question. Topic, I do absolutely love the bloodlines. It's one I'm looking to do more for Koi Talk magazine as we sort of, get more in. Sometimes it's getting the images, to be honest with you. I can write about a lot of it, but it's having the images to actually make it into an interesting piece for the mag. Right, folks, he's here, look. Hello, Joe.
You all right, Ricky? Good morning.
Yes, you snowed in today, mate. How is it up
there? Yeah, it's good. I think the fish are living a life of luxury, but I daren't look at British gas. My electricity bill's going to be through the roof, but well, Koi, innit?
Brilliant. So, Joe, what did you think to yesterday, then, mate? Big sort of, I should imagine, first experience like that for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the best thing I've seen since I've been in Japan, to be fair. I don't think there's going to be a better pond of Koi in England, is there, than that? My God. I said yesterday, are NND going to have any fish left?
That was quite a valid question, mate, to be honest.
Yeah,
crazy.
I think I saw the addiction fully live there. And
it's shocking. So what was the highlight for you? Which fish?
It's really hard to pick, to be honest, because you had two Kindai, two Showa, the Kindai and the Maritan. That Maritan with almost the Sumi on one side, Benny on the other, just split down the door. So
the customer's fish.
That is pretty unreal. And when it came out of that bag, I mean, a lot of fish travel and obviously they come out quite veiny, but that fish was just shining. Obviously, I think it took a little bit of a knock, but that was quite magic. And the two Sankeys that you had with the huge shoulders, they were phenomenal. But just a crazy vast amount of different varieties as well. I mean, NND obviously seemed to not. I don't know. You could probably say if they do specialize in one particular, but in top quality Shiro, top quality Kindai Showa, Sankey, Kaku, like.
Yeah. Well, that is their bag, really. Obviously, the Shiros have become a massive part of their production now with the DK lineage. But Showa's always been a staple. Sankey and Kohaku's the sort of one that's that I've underestimated there, to be honest with you. But I've got one sat at the farm at the minute that I'm hoping maybe 3 to 4 years time could be a potential contender for GC at the Nagaoka show if all goes well, because they really, what they've done with Kohaku, it's sort of slipped under the radar. And I think a lot slips under the radar with NND, to be honest. I mean, I don't know your thoughts coming out of being a hobbyist, getting in, how much you'd heard about them before you sort of got into it, or how much you really knew about them.
I don't know, not a lot, to be honest. I mean, obviously you do hear, when you talk about bloodlines and that kind of stuff, you don't hear about somebody maybe saying, this is an NND bloodline fish, or, you don't, because as a hobbyist, you don't necessarily see what goes on at the, the high-end shows in Japan and maybe where NND are operating in Japan. You only really hear about, Issa or Danichi, or, if something really magic goes to a show like the Taniguchi Golden Corn, then that instantly puts Taniguchi on a level. Whereas I guess NND kind of float under the radar for a lot of people. But that definitely changed my mind, if there was any doubt in my mind yesterday about the kind of quality and size as well, that they were getting on even male fish as well.
Yeah, that's that beast of a male. I've got quite some mate in it. I couldn't even. Yeah, I mean, how that travel yesterday as well was quite remarkable as well.
Unbelievable, yeah.
So yeah, it's good stuff. And what's happening with your pond at minute then, buddy?
I think I need to filter some out. I need to make some space. Yeah, I think when you come to, I think working at Koi Wholesale now, just being hands on with so many different fish. I've had a goshki that I've been quite happy with in my pond, and then we've just done 4 or 5 goshki in the auctions the other day that went really, really cheap. But I go back to my pond and look at the goshki in my pond and maybe think that there's better out there. So I want to try and do some other varieties in there. Like I really want to do a Kage Shiro.
Yeah, nice comment from Sher there. I never understood why any of these stock is not more available here. They, as you know, produce some great koi and size with them. Yeah, it's one I've never got. I think, to be honest with you, a lot of this is it's just awareness. I think the kind of the breeders who we talk about, who Joe sort of mentioned there, are so sort of stooped in the history of koi. It's some of the first names people always pick up. But I would go as far as saying that I don't really think the awareness in the UK, especially of Dainichi, for example, was all that before I started the content that we started doing. And again, you might comment more on that, Joe. This is just my perception that when I started doing that, I could say Dainichi to a lot of people and they kind of know the name, but not know what was sat behind the name.
Yeah.
And obviously not a lot of breeders are at the forefront of people like that, to be honest with you. And again, a lot of people probably understand the name of NND. And yeah, there's not that many of them in the country, to be honest with you. But I've never quite got it and understand. I felt like I've always pushed it a lot because I think it's a bit of a gem, to be honest with you, what they do with the fish. But yeah, awareness. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, I think
the Dainichi part of that, especially because I do feel that was legit. I feel like we're at that point even now with Sakai. Interestingly, a lot of people know the name Sakai, but I'm not sure. Obviously, since COVID, we've had a whole wave of new people into the hobby. I feel like the established koi keepers probably get it and understand Sakai a bit more. But there's a lot of people that possibly know the name but don't understand what's sat behind the name. Do you think that's a valid point?
I think it's a totally valid point. I think the way I see it is people, like you say, probably have heard the name but not understood why they have heard it. And what you've done with the content you've put out is really said you've heard of Dainichi, but this is the reason why they are so successful in Japan, because they can generate this body structure that not many other breeders in Japan can, and they've got these particular traits about them. And I think it's changed the hobbyist mindset of I will go and buy a kahaku, to going out, and if they see a kahaku in the marketplace that's a Dainichi, it instantly has a bit more, the hobbyist has a bit more knowledge in what they're looking at because they've maybe been involved in some of the content you've put out. So that from that respect, I think it's changed the mindset. I think hobbyists will always kind of look at what Sakai, for example, has just won GC at All Japan, and there'll be awareness about that, but maybe not about the particular body traits or what to look for. Whereas I guess there is that with Dainichi now, where they've given them content to learn.
I just feel like I know in Asia it's huge. The brand of the breeders and whatnot. It's whether it's more of a cultural thing. They're so invested in Sakai could produce anything, and if in that marketplace they'll go mad for it. Whereas I'm not sure over here the values, like the Sakai fish I've got this year, I don't feel like the hype is there around it. Probably like it wasn't when I started with the whole Dainichi thing, but you start showing it, and that's the reason I've sort of gone with Sakai this year. A, I've managed to get them, which is difficult enough to do, but B, it's then going to allow us to produce the content to show what it's all about, because until that people's actually seen it with their own eyes, which is not easy to do, you can't grasp what's going on. I mean, that last visit to me at Sakai was, so I've been there quite a few times, but it'd been a while, and even then it was just another moment of, my God, we were just playing a completely different game here to what everybody else is playing.
Yeah.
You know, the scale of it, the quantity of big, very high quality fish. I mean, potential grand champions, there's literally just a whole load of them sat waiting there in reserve at any given point to go and win a show in Japan. It's
unbelievable, isn't it?
It's mind-boggling when you think some breeders work their entire life and can't achieve that. It helps give you some perspective, but what ultimately is there in the fish, and like these Tosai that we've got, is this genetic pool of quality sat in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the skin's there, plain to see. And actually, that reminds me, folks, the audacity of Joe and Chris yesterday. My God. I walked in the fish house. The fish were floating on the pond. I walked in the fish house. I'd just been on a meeting to start unpacking the big ones. And they're scooping around in my Sakai pond uninvited. This net full of weapons on about selling us. There's not a chance. Next time I see that, there's going to have to be some disciplinary action, I think.
No, one thing I will say, though, is you might tell me otherwise, but I kind of feel like you have put your neck on the line a little bit with these Sakai and Dainichi stuff, because with the contacts you've got in Japan, you could have gone out and ordered the same amount of fish from any breeder and probably sold them at a decent, margin for yourself, for your dealers. But to go out there and spend more and get the Sakai and get the Dainichi name, you then have to get the content out to, people like me who maybe don't understand Dainichi, because, if I didn't understand what Dainichi and Sakai were, I don't know if I'd pay that extra 20 or 30% more, for, something with a name against it. So, you have kind of brought in a lot of really high quality fish, and, hopefully they're going to sell really well. I'm sure they will, because they are quality, and stacked up against maybe some of the other, fish at similar sizes I've seen. They're nowhere. They're on their own, really.
It is a good point you make, pal. And yeah, to be honest, I mean, they are big. This is always the thing with these big breeders. It's big deals to put together because they can sort of dictate what goes off a little bit. There's no getting away with just buying a box or two. It's buying the pond, and then you're talking serious numbers. But yeah, it'll be worth it. I know come the end of the year, when people see what they do, I'm sure they'll be chomping at the bit. And as we've seen now, I mean, it's only been a positive. I think we've seen there's more and more dealers than ever, seemingly at the minute, buying Dainichi fish, getting them into the marketplace. So it's positive all around, I think.
And then golden corns as well, like the golden corns. I don't think we've had, they just seem to fly out, don't they? And people seem to be loving golden corns.
And it's all learning about it. And I've got an interesting one there from Steve, actually, over at Pen Koi. For the new koi keepers, may not know what NND is. Yeah, that's a good point. I think the name has possibly not helped them along the way. So it's abbreviated for Nishikigoi Niigata Direct. But what they are is a company of 3 breeders now. Makoto Tanaka used to be Marusho Koi Farm, Umo Koi Farm, and Tamikazu Kobayashi, who was staff at some pretty big farms, Hoshikin, Terrazzo, sort of learnt his art there before jumping in on this venture. So I think that's possibly not helped along the way, because, like I say, with the others, it's just a name that they understand more, because it's a proper name, so to speak. But it's a fascinating one, and it might just boil down to the simple fact of it's how they're marketed and people understanding it.
Do you think it goes against them in people's mindset because they do so many different varieties, and they're not, maybe I couldn't say what they particularly specialize in? Do you think that probably has, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it might be, mate, because I think even if we boil that down at Sakai level, everybody knows Sakai, really. I mean, what's the first thing you think of? Korku and Sankey.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. There are other things there now at Sakai, and obviously they do Showa, just not on the level that it's Sakai. You think Kohaku Sanki, Dainichi, you think Kohaku Showa. Issa, you just know Showa. And I think that's an issue he'll have as well, because his Kohaku production has really ramped up in the past few years, and the level of what he's producing. So when I was there in December and saw some of the Sansai Yonsai, my God, I thought this guy's took these to another level. Body, skin, everything. But even still, I'm not, when you say, Kohaku to me, he's on very low down on the list that I'm thinking of. So yeah, you're possibly right there, and I think probably NND's in recent years more of the popularity has come, and awareness has come from the DK Shiro lineage more than what they're really. I mean, NND Sankey is probably one of the biggest ones for me. Yeah, Marusho Sankey, Marusho Sankey itself, and that might be where Summits has got lost, because everyone knew the Marusho Sankey prior to NND. His dad was a pioneer in the Sudazo lineage, so he didn't create the Sudazo lineage, but he was a big promoter of it and user of it. So it really gained a lot, and then obviously became NND. So that kind of got lost in there a little bit. Then it was sort of vamped up 2009, I think it was, when they introduced a Sakai female in. And he's took it to different levels, Grand Champion Awards now. Nagaoka Show, I think we've had 2 with Sankey. There's one of the parent fish currently at Mita. I mean, she's an absolute beast swimming around, and more fish hitting those kind of sizes as well. So it's serious stuff. And you saw it firsthand yesterday, the quality of those Sankey coming through. And I know the potential of them, but just not... curious one. And anybody watching, let me know your thoughts. Are we just chatting rubbish? Is it a case, is it just a lack of understanding, a lack of information out there? I'd really like to know from you guys sort of where that sits. And obviously it's just in general, and we can help and sort of do what we can in raising awareness across the board for more breeders where necessary.
I think there'll be people who've been to Japan and dealers that might maybe think we're talking rubbish, saying, everybody knows Dainichi and what they're going on about. But I really do think from a hobbyist point of view, or early hobbyist point of view, maybe people who are tuning into this might literally not have heard of Dainichi before they've seen some of the content we've put out. And, the content we're putting out, I guess, or you're putting out, it's not particularly for people who have been to Japan and seen the Dainichi farms. It's to give people a little insight into to helping them find better koi at low prices.
Yeah, I think there we go. Look, straight away, I'd never heard of NND until the DK line came along and watching your YouTube videos. So yeah, it's quite easy, and this is something me and Chris speak about a lot. It's quite easy for us just to presume. This is what we're very careful of with the magazine as well. Just presume everybody knows what we're talking about when we say it. Because it's second nature in a conversation for us. But yeah, let's say the input is appreciated. There we go. There's an interesting one. Is it the most hobbyists really don't care who the breeder is? They just want a koi they like the look of. That's a very good point as well, Ian. I think that just depends where you're at in the hobby. I probably completely agree. There's a lot that probably just think it's irrelevant. They're just looking at the koi. But what I do tend to see is a lot, as people progress in the hobby, they do like to start knowing this stuff. And when you start spending decent sums of money on fish, in my opinion, I'm talking from a few £100 upwards here. It's quite easy that you want to know what you're buying into, and having that bit of knowledge can help you make a more informed decision on the purchase. It can help you evaluate if what you're buying is priced fairly as well, because if you see some stupid, especially when you get into the dearer price brackets, this is, in my opinion, essential information. And there are, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people spending big sums on fish with not knowing enough about them, and that bothers me, because they can be really doing it blind a lot of the time, and what this then leads to is reputational damage sometimes for the breeders as well, and bits like that. So I feel like the more information you can have as koi keepers, the more armed you are at all times when you're going in, you know, looking at a fish or whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I've got completely carried away. I've done a useless job of catching up on all these old questions again. Oh dear, I'm just going to have to do it. So it's just me talking to my computer. So many, Richard H. So many good fish which cost, but how many koi keepers can afford them? I cannot. Yeah, and I get that, Richard. You know, it drives all of us crazy at all levels. But I think, again, this is why I've been really keen to push in the videos I've done, especially, is to show you how you can absolutely maximize your budget regardless of the level, because there's very simple traps a lot fall into. And don't get me wrong, I've raised, Joe's seen it now more firsthand. I've raised a lot of impressive fish that haven't come from being, you know, super expensive fish. Yeah, it's had to be done on quite a large scale in order to find and get that quality. But over the years, there's been loads of fish. You know, I used to pull them out at the shop all the time. You know, we didn't have a sort of growing model back then. So there'd be batches of fish that would often come in, and where it used to work well is we'd have tanks with batches of fish in, and the odd time a customer would say, pick something that you recommend, which doesn't happen a lot. And I've countless stories I can recall of those people coming back years later saying, you still got that fish? I've still got that fish. It did really well. It did exactly what you said it would do. And whereas others have just sort of fell off and gone to nothing. So yeah, with the right skill and education and mindset as well, you can get some real good value out there. I think there's no better example than a variety or two varieties that I think we both love. Me being a big Shiro fan and Joe being a big Asagi fan. So what we find here is, and this is just the best bit of snippet of advice I can give at this point, with Shiro Utsuri, the ones everyone tend to look for when they don't truly understand them are the ones with the super nice, all the sumi up and the super nice pattern there from day one. And let me tell you and be blunt about it, they're like rocking horse shit. The actual percentage of them that turn out that way, young, when a lot of people are buying them, is so few that a lot of them sometimes are worthy of competing at koi shows, which adds a tax onto them. And then, yeah, just the popularity of them, everyone along the line knows they're going to command more money. Whereas the fun part, and this is where the enjoyment of Shiros comes in, when you understand a little bit more about how sumi can develop, you can find Shiros that at Tosai, Nisai look like nothing. Give them the time, give them the conditions, allow the sumi to do its thing, because it doesn't happen overnight. Before you know it, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, you've got a fish probably that someone might look at and go, wow, that must have cost a fortune.
And that's probably the most enjoyable experience you can have in a hobby, isn't it? Is watching that sumi progress. There's not many varieties out there that can change over the course of 12 months like a Shiro as well. Like, you know, if you enjoy, you know, watching a fish develop, Shiro's got to be one of those, or Showa, where the sumi can progress. But yeah, we've just done Yorikawa, Nisai Pond, and you know, the examples from there, you know, I was really just watching Ricky what he's picking and what he's not, and trying to understand which ones he's keeping and which ones he isn't. And I'd go, why are you not keeping that one? He goes, oh, it's just shit. You know, so like there's, you know, there's Ricky understands what he's looking for, and you know, I think some of the fish that he's keeping, if they were in a dealer's shop, the dealer would maybe be trying to flog it, because at that point the sumi's not there, so it's you know, it's really under the skin, and it's not what you'd class as a Shiro finished pattern. It's all under the skin and not there yet, and you know, those fish are available on the marketplace.
There's actually and that is a point. This is actually an Omasako story now. So one of the most famous Omasako Shiro stories is a fish called Musashi. Beast of a thing, really unbelievable Shiro. and that came from a toe side that was almost sold and rejected. The reason they didn't sell it was because they was unsure how to price it, because it didn't look like anything. Yeah, this fish was just, you could see the skin, you sort of see the body, but there was not a lot else to go on. So they sort of said, look, well, we'll just keep it, because how can we ask, a high price for this? Because if it turns to nothing at this side, that's going to do their reputation no good. So they just kept it, and then bang, this side, all of a sudden it's like, shit, we're onto something here. Year 3, year 4, then it just went on from there to be a really dominant and incredible fish, and then a parent fish at the farm as well. And then what's also started happening at the farm from that, and since then, every year there is normally a batch of Tosai Omasako Shiros that are just white. Now, they used to sell them
just
at one point
without any sumi on at all.
Yeah, they've stopped now. And for those 2 exact reasons. One, they feel like if they put a price on them, because there's so much uncertainty, they know it from knowing what their sumi does. It's double pronged, because they're thinking in their head, we could have a future, literally amongst these whitefish, we could have a future grand champion. They don't know it. None of us know it.
Yeah.
All we can do is look at Shiroji and body. Obviously, they've got a shit body. They're going to get rid of it. But that is it. So they keep them and grow them. Rather than sell them, because how can you price that? And that's the dilemma they're caught in. It's like, well, there could be a grand champion in here. There could be a lot of really good fish in here.
Yeah.
If we sell them now, do we price them high based on we think there could be some super fish? In that case, if we do that and we sell them and they all just stay white or don't do a lot, they risk reputational damage. Absolute dilemma. But if you can risk it and get stuck into stuff like that, that's the dream. That's the challenge of koi keeping.
Yeah.
And that's how you can maximize on that budget. And it's just where that bit of knowledge comes in. And moving on to one of your favorites, the Sagi, that's another area where I see just that huge chance, because everybody looks, again, typically for the ones Tosai this side that are darker and more refined in the base color, and then with the Benny all on the fins and on the stomach, on the belly line. How many of them you've seen like that, Joe? There's just so few. But what happens here is, especially with the Oya ones, more than anything, they take a lot of time. So the ones that do look like that at a young age don't often leave Japan because they're good for competition. So, and then they'll command the price because they are good for competition at that point, and there's not many of them. Then the rest, you have to give them a chance. And it's an easy one to do with Asagi as well, because the ones that everyone's typically going around and rejecting are the lighter coloured ones that really show very little sign of Benny. Now, when I'm selecting them, the ones I keep are the ones that are very light with just a tiny spot of Benny, sometimes even no Benny showing, because I've seen that with Oya ones. It can be until 3 years old before somebody finally starts to surface.
Yeah.
So with the right, if you take the right risk, you end up with a good fish long term. You just have to invest in it, look after it, and it can come really good. And you can pick that up for a snip of what its potential future value could be.
Yeah, and it's got to be so difficult to be, if a Japanese breeder wanted to start with Asagi, for example, it's got to be so difficult for them, because Oya and Otsuka and maybe is it Yamaju that does Asagi as well? Can't remember.
Yeah.
But they've kind of built a reputation of, if you buy the good ones, the Benny will come. And you probably have faith in that Oya and Otsuka bloodline. If somebody started Asagi and they didn't have any reputation of what the bloodline does, you can't really put faith in it, can you? And spend big money on a really light one with the Benny not there. So these Japanese breeders have built reputations over years.
And this is another bit as well. It's a risk. It's a gamble, because what I'm doing is, I know that when I'm selecting them, I generally look for it can be a millimetre of Benny on the fin, the cheek, one scale on the lateral line, anything like that. That's what I'm looking for. That's not a guarantee it's going to come. That's only reducing and mitigating my risk because I can't keep them all. But what it can be, I mean, there's that 3-year-old one swimming around in that swamp of fish at the minute, and only now, all of a sudden, the belly's starting to mature and the benny's coming. Is it going to really all come? Who knows? It might take 2 more years. At that point, I'll have invested 5 years in that fish, and it still might not come as I wanted it to. So again, where's the gamble there now? Because I know if I sell it now, you don't get top price for it. And this is the same as the breeders, and being very honest about it, you don't get the top price because there's still that element of risk. If all the Benny was there on that belly right now, it would be a seriously expensive fish to release for sale.
Yeah.
So, and this is the same with the breeders. The minute there's less risk and a breeder can see there's less risk, they'll command a higher price for it. So ultimately, for you to win and kind of beat the breeder, you've got to be prepared to accept the risk and then also invest the time, because you don't get the results overnight. And that patience bit, I think, is one of the hardest challenges a lot of koi keepers face.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, wow. There we go. That's just one. I've done an hour already. Ricky, how do you remember each and every fish at KW? I tell you what, this is something I don't. My memory is terrible, right, at best of times. But yeah, when it comes to the fish, it's quite remarkable. I do manage to piece it all together, but it's a good crowd. I don't know. It can just only be experience, I'm sure, Steve. But it's good.
Perhaps when you get a new fish, the fish goes in the mind, and then it pushes something important out. Valentine's Day or wife's birthday.
That's normally the one. Cool. I think we'll probably leave that one there, buddy, because I've got a meeting to get off to soon.
Yeah, lovely.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in, Joe. Anyway, buddy, and
we're back
wasn't it? Soon. Obviously, it's what is it? Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Is it 23rd?
23rd. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe's gonna be there for that one over on the Koi Talk channel. You'll not want to miss. Like I say, there's some more news on that new show coming soon. Right, I'll let you get off, Joe. Anyway, catch you in a bit. There we have it, folks. Thank you for everybody who's tuned in for that one. It's been a very quick hour, that, in the end. And I did just see something about the mag. I wanted to just answer a couple of questions about a couple of missing issues. Oh, Brian there, just got his 21. There you go. Enjoy it, buddy. Just bear with me. It's got lost in comments somewhere. Very pleased to see the snow has stopped here as well. I think it was about issue 1 and 16, to be honest with you. So what we're planning on doing, this is something we've been banding around for a while, because I think it's just important to understand the process we have, Louise. When we do the magazine runs, we produce them. We have to do a minimum print run in order to make it viable. That gives us enough to cover all the subscriptions and then leave us with some stock for back issues as well. When that stock of back issues has gone, that leaves us in a situation where, in order to make it viable at the current pricing structure, we have to reorder the same quantity. And we generally run about 2,000 copies of each issue at the moment. So what we have decided we're going to do, again, we'll be to market with this soon, is produce a legacy section on the website, because we can do small print runs. It just massively bumps up our costs. So, and to be honest, to invest in 2,000 mags now, one of those legacy issues, and just have them sat there would not make sense from a cash flow perspective. Money would be better spent elsewhere. So what we're planning on doing is producing a legacy section on the website. So when one of those original batches runs out, we can do the small limited runs. They are going to come in at a slightly higher price point, but that allows us to keep doing the small runs as and when stock runs out. So that's going to be coming soon. We've got quite, again, as ever, a lot we're working on in the background. So bear with us, but yeah, they'll be coming up, like I say, as legacy issues for a slightly higher rate. But then the whole back catalogue that will allow us to keep them continuously available. Your best way to avoid that one is to subscribe today for $4.95 a month, and then you'll be sure not to miss any. And then there's an interesting one. Digital downloads. No, we don't do digital downloads. Again, we're working on something at the moment. I'm not going to say too much, but the reason we didn't want to do a digital download is because I feel like the experience of sort of e-mags out there is pretty poor at the moment, and the whole sort of value in it for me was to have, and that's why we put so much effort into the design and the quality of the mag, is to have something tangible. I think is the way forward with this, to truly enjoy the pictures, the reading experience, and anything and everything like that. So right now we don't, but let's say we are working on something to try and help bring the content out to everybody. And then just one last one. Any news on shipping magazine abroad? Paul, I'm surprised you've missed this, buddy. The international shipping has been available for a while now, pal. If you get on there, you can get as many of them sent over to you as you like, buddy. And issue 21, there's quite a few now. Keep you busy for a little while. So there we have it, and it was there, Brian, issue 1 and 16. So that's what's happening with them. And regards international shipping, it's all on the website. You can bang your details in and you'll get a shipping estimate. So if it works for you, then fantastic. But once again, thank you for everyone tuning in. One last reminder from me that the tickets to our Secret Sankey Showdown Part 2 are being made available on the Koi Talk website tomorrow from 9 a.m. Limited places on them. There's only 200 tickets available. Let me laugh there. There we go. Happy days, Paul. Look forward to receiving your order, buddy. Shirley, thank you. It's coming up, so don't miss it. You can get full details on the Koi Wholesale Koi Talk website about what's on the day, but it's bringing the full combination of our the Secret Sankey Showdown event, some judging, and then Q&A live, and our live auctions all under one roof for the day with some very great guests. All of our team's going to be there. Lee Hadfield, Crafty, Yivo from the Koi Partner, and not forgetting Mr. Alan Tate as well, of course. And then one last reminder from Joe, auction fish. There we go. I don't know what they've been pulling out now. Some mad fish in the auction for next week too. There we go. Next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. And apparently they're on the website now for you to take a look at. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back next Wednesday. So I'll see you all then.